Nerd alert! Learning is important, right?
Yes, exactly. What a bunch of nerds.
Nerd alert!
That's right.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rob DeMars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines.
Hello, Elena.
Hello, we are back with your weekly Nerd Alert. Every week, I'll take a deep dive into academic marketing research and translate its complex ideas into simple, understandable language for Rob. And of course, for all of you, are you ready to nerd out, Rob?
Oh, I've warmed up the Nerdmobile, and I'm ready for this road trip, Elena.
You're literally in a van right now, so that's a perfect connection. All right, well, let's get into it. As always, we'll link the research we cover in the episode notes. This week, I read a study titled The Power of Effect, Predicting Intention, by John D. Morris, Changmu Wu, James E. Geason, Ju-Young Kim, all from the University of Florida. But before I get into things, Rob, let me ask you this. Do you think you mostly make decisions rationally, or do you make them with your heart and then justify them with your head?
Well, Elena, I know this is going to really surprise you, but I am a very impulsive person, and I make about 80% of my decisions with my infantile region of my brain. So I definitely feel like I lead with my heart. If the adult in me, that little sliver of 20% forces me to sleep on something overnight, then I might make a rational decision. But 9 times out of 10, it's my gut.
I'd actually say I'm very similar to you. I make very quick decisions. So it's hard for me to think that those are all from my rational brain if I'm making them so fast. So most of us, though, would like to think that we make our decisions rationally, not emotionally. And most marketers like to think our customers do the same thing, but do they really? That is what this study is all about. It might be one of the biggest debates in advertising. What actually drives consumer behavior? Is it our rational thoughts or our emotions? And for decades, advertisers have leaned into the idea that if you just give people the right facts, they'll make the logical choice. Emotions are often treated like the cherry on top, nice to have, but not the real driver. Well, a massive study with over 23,000 responses to 240 different ads actually debunked that over 20 years ago in 2002. This study was all about testing whether cognitive factors, things like belief in a brand or knowledge about a product, or emotional responses, things like arousal and dominance, were better at predicting actual consumer intent. The researchers used a nonverbal tool called AdSAM, which measures emotions visually instead of relying on traditional survey questions. And that matters because when you ask people about their emotions in words, they have to process their feelings cognitively first, which muddies the results. Using a purely visual approach, the study aimed to capture gut reactions, the stuff that happens before logic kicks in. So, Rob, have you heard of that? Have you heard of AdSAM as a creative research tool?
I've never heard of AdSAM. What was their methodology?
So it's a nonverbal visual tool designed to measure emotional responses, used a lot in marketing and advertising. So they have access emotion among 3 bipolar dimensions: appeal, which indicates how positive or negative a feeling is; engagement, which reflects level of activity or passivity in the emotional state; and empowerment, which measures a sense of control or submission associated with the emotion. So they use graphic characters to represent each dimension, allowing respondents to intuitively indicate their feelings without relying on verbal descriptions. So it minimizes language biases, making it effective across different cultures and demographics, including children and adults. They've said they validated using MRI that confirms effectiveness in accurately measuring emotional responses. So
that sounds
cool.
amazing. I mean, you're sticking your mom in an MRI machine and seeing if she reacts well to the Pringles ad.
Well, I think that they're using that to confirm. I don't know if that's everybody gets into it. That'd be expensive. Yeah, that's an expensive consumer research tool.
All right, cool. AdSAM.
So that's interesting. You're giving them images to look at, it sounds like, instead of responding. That's actually so interesting that your brain, so it presents you with pictorial representations instead of words or numbers. Oh, that's so cool. I should have looked at this more before I chose it for this. But I thought you had probably heard of it. You'd be covering it. I
hadn't heard of it.
That's
no.
my bad.
No.
That makes sense because, if you have to process your feelings cognitively, it's going to change the results. But with those visuals, you can get those gut reactions. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very primal and appropriate for television.
Right. Perfect. Well, let's talk about what they found. Across nearly every product category and media type, that emotional response dominated over cognition when predicting cognitive attitudes, aka things like purchase intent and brand interest. But here's where it gets interesting. Affective attitude or emotion was a stronger predictor of purchase intent than cognitive attitude in 12 out of 13 product categories. So, Rob, can you guess what one category that
Oh
was where
boy.
emotion was not
Wow.
a predictor of purchase success?
God, I guess the only one I can think of is banking, because there's nothing more boring than banking. But hey, if the interest rate is good, or I don't know, that just makes you retreat to your pocketbook, that rational pocketbook.
So, it wasn't banking, but the answer actually made me like, I wouldn't have ever guessed this. I don't want to say it makes me question the study, but okay, what it is computers, which I know you're going to have a problem with because you're such an
What?
Apple. Yeah, you'd think people generally choose their computers based on a brand, but that was the one that the other categories, it was very clear like emotions drove purchase intent. But the computer category, logical factors like belief in the product capabilities, knowledge about the features, it had a stronger impact. So it's not saying
Yeah.
brand has no impact, but it just won out in that one category over
But
brand.
I could see though that in the desktop PC world that there is just so much feature discussion over processor speeds, all that, where Apple owners tend to just be more emotion. Like, I just want the cool looking computer that I know is supposed to be fast. But that's also such a sliver of the laptop desktop market. So I could see how, if you removed Apple as an outlier and just looked at the whole suite of all the different brands that are out there, that could be the case.
And I should say, I said brand earlier, but it's emotional versus cognitive. So they looked at those two different things: a cognitive response, which is what people think about an ad. For example, is this product high quality? Do I believe what they're saying? And then the emotional response, which is more how people felt about the ad. So does it make me happy, excited, nostalgic? So you're right. They're not saying that in the computer category, emotion never drives the purchase decision. I think we're thinking, oh, when emotion is more present, you might be more towards a brand like Apple or even a brand like Microsoft. But in that category in particular, the cognitive side won out
Right.
a little bit. So they looked at those two and they measured how each of the factors influenced purchase intent. So that was whether someone actually considered buying the product from the advertisement. And what they found was that emotions were nearly twice as powerful in predicting whether someone would want to buy something. So that means that the way an ad made people feel was almost twice as important as what makes them think when it comes to influencing behavior. To be clear, emotional response explained nearly twice the variance in purchase intent compared to cognitive response. So even in industries where you'd expect logic to reign supreme, emotion still won out. The same pattern held true across advertising formats, whether it was TV, print, or even different ad testing methods like finished films versus rough cuts. So, Rob, have we found the same thing? Have we found that emotional messaging typically outperforms rational messaging in TV creative?
Yeah, I think this is where you have to be careful and really drill into what do we mean by outperforms. I think absolutely that our emotive commercials drive greater structure. So when we look at things over a 6-month brand recall like study, you see those ads really pop. At the same time, we have a strong opinion about all of our work needing to sing for its supper every time it airs and drive performance. And there are certainly factors that drive immediate performance that aren't seen as emotive, right? When you think about is it a compelling offer? What's my reason to act right now? Can start to fall in the more rational bucket. But I think the magic is when you can combine the two and create truly memorable work that also teases out some aspect of rational thinking that will get someone to respond or address the brand in the moment.
I think too, the research we covered a couple weeks ago on the multiplier effect would totally back that up. That the ads that are
Right.
most powerful, they have that combination of the brand or like the emotion is amplifying more of like the
Yes.
rational cognitive
Yes.
reasons to buy. I would also say that emotion can vary by category. And there are
Great
some
point.
categories, yeah, where you think like, oh, well, humor is going to be the most powerful. It's like, well, for this category, it might not be an emotion that you'd, I don't know, automatically think of, or it might not appear that strong, but it's like the subtleties of why someone would buy your brand or buy from your category. It doesn't mean you need to be the loudest brand out there, but it's like, are you
Right.
speaking to the human truth about your brand in your
Right.
category? So to conclude this study, if you're spending all your time just listing facts, no logical reasons to buy, you're not making people feel something, you're probably leaving money on the table. If you're making ads that are purely logic driven, we're cheaper, we have these 5-star reviews, you might be missing the bigger picture. People don't
Mhm.
buy just based on facts, they buy based on how an ad makes them feel as well. So this study proves that if you can tap into the right emotional triggers, you're way more likely to influence actual behavior. So next time someone tells you that humor, nostalgia, it's just fluff, hit them with this study, because if you want people to take action, it's not just what you say, it's how you make them feel. Time for a Rob GPT. Buying a product is like falling in love. Logic might make a case, but emotions seal the deal. What do you think?
Yeah, no, you know what? It all resonates with me. And I think you and I both are two case studies of, we might come across as, well, you come across as a rational person. I don't probably, but let's just face it. Our gut drives so much. Our emotions drive so much. That's what makes us human and not computers. And so it does make sense at the end of the day. And just a powerful reminder. It's so easy when you're in a boardroom, you can sit there and analyze the strategy and the rationale and the features and the benefits and all that stuff. But wow, at the end of the day, don't we just all want to feel good? Don't we all want to laugh?
I also think that this is a really good insight for like B2B marketers, especially because so many times like B2B brands, I think B2B founders sometimes are so focused on the speeds and feeds. Like you should buy this because it makes more sense. But there is like the power of a brand. And you look at companies like Salesforce that took a long time building their brand. Like they don't necessarily have the best CRM out there, but they've got branded characters. They're well known. Like as much as we don't want that to be part of the decision-making process, it is, especially in getting in the consideration set. It's a really big deal.
I think that's such a great point that businesses can really learn something about not trying to look like a business when they're marketing to other businesses, because everybody shows up in their suit, right? So why show up in a suit? Show up in a clown suit. You'll get noticed.
In conclusion,
put on that rubber nose.
That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Taylor De Los Reyes for producing the show. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you like the podcast, please leave us a review. Now go forth and build great marketing.
How many media people does it take to screw in a light bulb?
You used that joke on the previous episode, so no one listening to this might understand what that means.
I thought I was bringing it all around, and I was like, I don't even know the answer to that. Okay, sorry, I'll start over.
Marketing Architects.